What if the person you trusted most was hiding something from you? David thought he knew everything about his wife, Emily. But when he noticed her never showering without their dog, Rex, and heard whispers behind a locked door, doubt began to creep in. Was she keeping secrets? Was there someone else? Determined to uncover the truth, David installed a hidden camera. But when he watched the footage, what he saw made his blood run cold. His stomach dropped, his heart pounded. What did David witness that night? And why would it change everything he thought he knew about his wife? The soft hum of rain drummed against the windows of their Seattle home, a modest two-story house tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved at each other but didn't pry too much, where the sound of distant traffic mixed with the occasional bark of a dog or laughter of children playing outside. It was the life David and Emily had always wanted: peaceful, predictable, comfortable. David Miller, a 34-year-old IT consultant, was the embodiment of rationality. Tall, broad-shouldered, with neatly trimmed dark brown hair and sharp hazel eyes, he was the kind of man who approached problems with logic rather than emotion. His work required precision, and his nature mirrored that. He liked his coffee strong, his routine steady, and his world well-ordered. He had always prided himself on being observant, a man who noticed patterns and anomalies. But he never expected the biggest mystery in his life to be his own wife. Emily Miller, 31, was different. She had a creative mind, a warm spirit, and an almost ethereal beauty about her. Slender, with wavy auburn hair and piercing blue eyes, she had always been the more expressive one in their relationship. She loved stories, writing them, reading them, losing herself in them. Her work as a freelance writer allowed her to spend most of her time at home, creating worlds with her words, while their German shepherd, Rex, kept her company. Rex was 4 years old, a large and well-built German shepherd, with deep brown eyes that held a surprising amount of intelligence. His coat was a mix of black and tan, thick and well-groomed, his ears always alert. Unlike many dogs of his breed, Rex wasn't aggressive or overly energetic. He was calm, observant, and deeply attached to Emily. It was more than just loyalty. It was as if he sensed something in her that David didn't. At first, David didn't question it when Emily began bringing Rex into the bathroom with her. "He's just protective," she had said once, ruffling the dog's ears affectionately. "You know how he is." David had shrugged, accepting it. Emily was home alone for most of the day, and he figured it was natural for her to want the dog nearby. But over time it started to seem strange. She never showered without him, not once. And then she started locking the door. David had never seen her do that before. They had always been comfortable around each other, unbothered by the small intimacies of married life. But now, every time she went into the bathroom, he would hear the faint click of the lock, followed by the sound of Rex pacing inside with her. More than once, as David walked past the bathroom, he thought he heard muffled whispers, Emily's voice low and urgent, like she was talking to someone. But who? One evening, curiosity got the better of him. Emily was in the shower, and David stood just outside the door, listening. The water was running, but underneath it he heard her voice, soft, urgent. David pressed his ear to the door. At first it was just murmurs, but then, "It's okay, just stay here, you're safe." His stomach tightened. Emily wasn't on the phone, he was sure of it. The only one in there with her was Rex. When she finally emerged, towel wrapped around her damp frame, her auburn hair clinging to her shoulders, David casually asked, "What's up with you and Rex in the bathroom?" Emily froze for a fraction of a second, just enough for David to notice. Then she laughed. It was light-hearted, but there was something off about it. "He just keeps me company." She reached down, scratching behind Rex's ears. "Right, buddy?" David studied her. She wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the full truth either. His gaze flicked to her hands. Her fingers were fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. Emily always did that when she was nervous. David had spent years learning his wife's habits, her small tells, the way she looked when she was happy, when she was frustrated, when she was hiding something. Why did she need the dog by her side, even in such private moments? Something wasn't right. David had no idea what. but he was going to find out. At first, it was easy to dismiss. People got distracted, people forgot things. But as the days turned into weeks, David began to notice a pattern, one that sent an uneasy chill through him. Emily was always a meticulous person, the kind who double-checked that the oven was off before bed, who made sure the doors were locked and the lights were out. But now she was slipping. It started with small things. One evening, David came home to the scent of something burnt lingering in the air. The kitchen light was on, and a pot sat abandoned on the stove, its contents charred at the bottom. Emily was nowhere in sight. When he found her, she was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, staring blankly at the far wall. Rex was draped across her lap, his large head resting on her thigh, eyes open and alert, as if he were watching over her. "Emily?" David called softly, approaching her carefully. She blinked, her expression slow to shift, as if she had been miles away. Then, just like that, she forced a smile, one of those smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice light, as if nothing was wrong. "How was work?" David frowned. "Did you forget something on the stove?" Emily's gaze flickered with something, confusion, embarrassment, before she quickly stood, causing Rex to lift his head. "Oh," she murmured, brushing her hair back. "I must have gotten distracted." She let out a small laugh, but there was something hollow about it. "Good thing I didn't burn the house down, huh?" David didn't laugh. It didn't stop there. She began leaving lights on, doors unlocked. One morning she left the front door slightly ajar, something that was entirely out of character for her. David found it when he was heading out to work, his gut twisting uncomfortably. He nudged the door open, finding Emily once again curled up on the couch, her forehead damp with sweat. This time, when he crouched beside her, he could see it more clearly, the way her fingers trembled, the way her breathing was just a bit too shallow. "Emily," he said gently, placing a hand on her arm. She startled, her eyes snapping to his, like she hadn't realized he was there. Rex, who had been resting beside her, let out a low whine, nuzzling her hand. Emily exhaled sharply, blinking as if she was trying to clear something from her mind. I'm fine," she said quickly, sitting up. "Just tired." She was always tired. David wanted to believe that's all it was. But something wasn't right. The whispers started next. One night, David came home earlier than expected. He had finished his last meeting an hour ahead of schedule and decided to surprise Emily with dinner. He picked up her favorite takeout from the Thai place down the street, the one she always craved but rarely indulged in. It was raining lightly when he pulled into the driveway, the dim glow of their house looking warm and inviting against the darkened street. But when he stepped inside, something felt off. The house was quiet, too quiet except for the sound of water running upstairs. Emily was in the shower. David set the food down on the kitchen counter, about to call out to her when he heard it, her voice. At first, he assumed she was on the phone, but as he listened closer, he realized something unsettling. There was no second voice. Emily was whispering, but to who? The hair on the back of his neck stood up. He took slow, careful steps towards the staircase, his pulse quickening. The bathroom door was closed, but not completely. Through the small gap, he could see the warm mist from the shower curling out into the hallway. Then he heard it again, Emily's voice low and urgent. "It's okay, just stay here, you're safe." David's blood ran cold. Was she talking to Rex? Or was someone else in there with her? His mind spun with possibilities. Was she hiding something, or someone? The idea made his stomach twist uncomfortably. Emily had never given him a reason to doubt her, but something was wrong, something she wasn't telling him. He stepped forward, pressing his hand lightly against the door. If he pushed even slightly, it would open. He could step inside. He could see for himself. A sudden click broke the moment, the sound of the door locking from the inside. David froze. His own wife had locked him out. His heart pounded as he stepped back, staring at the closed door, feeling a mix of frustration, worry, and something else, something he didn't want to admit. That night when Emily finally emerged, her hair still damp, towel wrapped around her, David forced himself to act normal. "Hey," she greeted him softly, her tone a little too careful, as if testing the waters. David swallowed. "Hey, I, brought dinner." Her face lit up, but just as quickly the light faded. "Thanks," she said, offering him a small smile before glancing down at Rex, who was, as always, glued to her side. David's chest tightened. She was keeping something from him, and now he was determined to find out what. David couldn't ignore it anymore. The unease had settled into his bones, gnawing at the edges of his mind every time he saw Emily retreat into the bathroom, Rex at her heels like a silent shadow. The locked door, the whispers, the exhaustion in her eyes, the lie in her smile. It was all too much. He needed to know the truth. Late that night, after Emily had drifted into a restless sleep, David lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, his mind a storm of questions. He turned toward her, studying her face in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. She looked peaceful, but there was something fragile about the way she slept, like a person teetering on the edge of a dream and a nightmare. Rex lay curled at her feet, his deep brown eyes open, watching David. David had always liked Rex, but tonight something about the dog unsettled him. There was an awareness in his gaze, something almost too human, as if he knew exactly what David was planning. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Slowly, carefully, David slipped out of bed. He moved with measured steps, avoiding the creaky floorboard near the door as he made his way downstairs to his office, a small space tucked into the back corner of their house. The desk was cluttered with stacks of paper and an untouched cup of coffee from earlier that evening. He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a small, black security camera, no bigger than a matchbox. He hesitated. Spying on his wife. It felt wrong. It felt like a betrayal. But hadn't she betrayed him first? Hadn't she shut him out, lied to him, locked the door between them? If she wouldn't give him answers, he had to find them himself. By the time he returned upstairs, the house was silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway. He stepped into the bathroom, its cold tile floor sending a sharp chill through his bare feet. The air still smelled faintly of Emily's lavender shampoo. He worked quickly, placing the camera in the corner of the mirror, angling it towards the shower and the counter. It was small enough to be unnoticed, but powerful enough to capture everything. By morning, guilt gnawed at his insides like a slow-burning fire. He could barely meet Emily's eyes over breakfast, could barely focus on her voice as she talked about her latest article, could barely hear anything over the pounding in his chest. She had no idea what he had done. He waited. Hours passed. He pretended to work, pretending that everything was normal, when in reality, all he could think about was the moment she would step into that bathroom. Then it happened. Emily stood, stretching lightly. "I'm going to take a shower," she said, her voice soft, as if she were already somewhere else in her mind. David forced a smile, nodding. He watched as she walked upstairs, Rex following closely at her heels, ever the loyal companion. The moment the door clicked shut, David grabbed his phone. His hands felt clammy as he opened the app that connected to the camera feed. A live stream appeared on the screen, showing the interior of the bathroom. Emily stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. She moved slowly, like someone carrying a heavy burden. Her movements weren't mechanical, not exactly, but there was a hesitation, as if each step required effort. Rex sat by the door, watching her. Everything seemed normal at first. Then something unexpected happened. Rex suddenly perked up. His ears twitched, his posture shifting from relaxed to alert. He stood and walked over to the counter, his large paws making almost no sound on the tile floor. He sniffed once, then reached up with his mouth, grabbing a small orange bottle that had been tucked away near the sink. David leaned forward, his breath catching. Rex carefully carried the bottle over to Emily, who had just stepped into the shower. She reached out with trembling hands, taking it from him as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Then she whispered, "Good boy, Rex. You always know when I need you." David felt his stomach drop. She twisted the cap off the bottle with a practiced motion, tipping a small white pill into her palm. Her fingers shook as she lifted it to her mouth, swallowing it dry. David's heartbeat thundered in his ears. What was in that bottle? Why did Emily need it so urgently? His breath came fast, shallow. He suddenly felt lightheaded, as if the room had tilted under him. He had expected something, but not this. Rex wasn't just a companion. He wasn't just a pet. He was a lifeline, and Emily was hiding something much, much bigger than David had ever imagined. David didn't confront Emily immediately. Instead, he sat in the dim glow of his office, the screen of his laptop casting an eerie light against his face as he typed the name of the medication into the search bar. Clonazepam. His pulse quickened as he read through the results. It was an anti-anxiety medication, often prescribed for severe panic disorders, PTSD, and, in some cases, even seizures. A cold weight settled in his chest. Emily had never mentioned struggling with anxiety. She had never hinted at PTSD. Leaning back in his chair, David ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. His thoughts spiraled. Had she been suffering all this time without telling him? Had he been so blind to it that she felt she had to hide it from him? And why hadn't she trusted him enough to tell him? The questions followed him through the next day, haunting his every thought. He couldn't focus at work, barely listening in on meetings, his mind stuck on the image of Emily in the bathroom, hands shaking as she took that pill. He knew he had to talk to her. But how? How did he approach something so deeply personal without making her feel cornered? That evening, he found Emily curled up on the couch, a blanket draped over her legs, a book resting open on her lap, though her eyes weren't really moving across the words. Rex lay beside her, his large head resting against her thigh, his ears flicking slightly when David entered the room. Emily glanced up and gave a small, tired smile. "Hey," she said softly, shifting to sit up. David hesitated before walking over and lowering himself onto the couch beside her. He reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, feeling how small and fragile they were against his own. "Emily," he began, his voice careful, gentle. "I know you've been hiding something. Please, talk to me." For a long moment, Emily didn't move. Her fingers gripped Rex's fur, almost as if drawing strength from the dog. David could feel her pulse quicken beneath his touch, the tension radiating off her like a silent storm. Then, finally, she spoke. "I have claustrophobia, David." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I can't be alone in small enclosed spaces. It triggers panic attacks." David sat in stunned silence. Emily's gaze flickered downward, her free hand absent-mindedly rubbing small circles against Rex's fur. "It started when I was a child," she continued, her voice hollow, distant. "I was locked in a closet for hours as a punishment by my stepfather." David's breath caught in his throat. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around his. "Ever since then, bathrooms, elevators, even small rooms make me feel like I can't breathe. I never told you because I didn't want you to see me as weak." Her voice cracked on the last word. David felt a wave of emotions crash over him, rage, not at her, but at whoever had done this to her. Guilt for not seeing it sooner. Sorrow for the years she must have spent carrying this burden alone. She let out a shaky breath, blinking rapidly as if to keep the tears at bay. "And then," she whispered, "I was diagnosed with POTS." David frowned. "POTS?" Emily nodded. "Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It means if I stand up too fast, my heart rate skyrockets. I get dizzy. Sometimes I faint. It's unpredictable. Rex." She looked down at the dog, her expression softening. "He's the only one who can sense it before it happens. He nudges me, makes me sit down, sometimes even lays on me to keep me from collapsing. He helps me before I even realize I need help." David exhaled slowly, feeling the crushing weight of everything he hadn't known pressing down on him. All this time he had doubted her, suspected something sinister, when in reality she had been fighting battles he couldn't see. He reached up, gently cupping her cheek, forcing her to look at him. "Emily." His voice was thick with emotion. "You are not weak." Her lip trembled, and for the first time since she started speaking, a tear escaped down her cheek. David pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, as if that alone could undo all the pain, all the fear she had carried. Rex, sensing the shift in emotion, pressed closer, his warm presence grounding them both. For the first time in weeks, David finally understood. And for the first time in years, Emily wasn't carrying it alone anymore. David had spent weeks questioning the locked doors, the hushed whispers, the way Emily clung to Rex, as if the dog was the only thing keeping her upright. He had questioned her behavior, her secrets, her silence, but now, after hearing the truth from her lips, he no longer felt the need to search for answers. Now, he only wanted to help. The shift was almost imperceptible at first. Small changes in his routine, small adjustments in the way he moved through their home. He stopped working late, no longer choosing to stay at the office for an extra hour or two just because he could. Instead, he was home in time to cook dinner, in time to check on Emily, in time to be present in a way he hadn't before. His first real step toward understanding came when he found himself sitting in the waiting room of a therapist's office, flipping through an outdated magazine while Emily filled out paperwork at the front desk. The office was calm, muted, decorated in warm tones and soft lighting. A faint scent of lavender filled the air, likely from the small essential oil diffuser sitting in the corner. The chairs were plush but stiff, arranged in a small circle around a coffee table stacked with books about trauma, anxiety, and healing. David glanced around at the other people waiting, an older woman with tired eyes, a young man with his foot tapping anxiously against the floor, a teenage girl staring at her phone, her shoulders tense. He suddenly felt out of place, like he was intruding on something deeply personal. Emily returned from the front desk, sitting beside him. Her hands were folded in her lap, her fingers tugging absently at the sleeve of her sweater, a nervous habit he had come to recognize all too well. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. She offered a small, tired smile. "Yeah." When her name was called, David watched her disappear down the hallway with a therapist he had yet to meet, a woman named Dr. Valerie Hayes. Dr. Hayes was in her mid-50s, with a warm but firm demeanor. She had short, greying hair, neatly styled, and a face that carried the weight of years of listening to stories of pain and survival. When David met her a few sessions later, she greeted him with sharp, perceptive eyes and a handshake that was gentle yet steady. "I appreciate you coming in," she said, motioning for him to take a seat. "Emily has made incredible progress, and having your support will only help her more." David had felt out of his depth, sitting across from a woman who had spent decades unraveling the complexities of the human mind. But he listened as she explained what claustrophobia really was, how trauma rewired the brain, how POTS wasn't just about fainting, but about the way the nervous system misfired, leaving Emily exhausted, dizzy, and sometimes completely incapacitated. By the time he left the office, he realized how little he had known and how much he had to learn, so he kept learning. Emily had mentioned service dog training, explaining how Rex had been specifically trained to detect changes in her heart rate, to alert her when an episode was coming, to apply pressure when she needed grounding. David had never questioned how Rex knew what he did, but now he wanted to understand. He reached out to a local service dog training center, signing up for a course designed for partners and family members of service dog handlers. He didn't tell Emily at first, not wanting to make a big deal of it. The training center was run by a man named James Carter, a former military dog trainer who had transitioned into working with service dogs for medical and psychiatric assistance. James was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that commanded quiet respect. His short-cropped hair was streaked with silver, his dark brown eyes assessing but not unkind. "You ever worked with dogs before?" James asked on David's first day, watching as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Not really, David admitted. Just Rex. James nodded. Good dog, he said simply. Smart, loyal, one of the best service animals I've seen. David felt something shift in his chest. Pride? Maybe. Or maybe it was something else, something like recognition. Over the next few weeks, he learned more than he ever expected to. He learned how Rex could sense subtle changes in Emily's breathing, how he could tell when her blood pressure was dropping before she even felt it. He learned how to read Rex's signals, how to understand when the dog was alerting Emily to sit down, when he was providing emotional support, when he was simply staying close because he knew she needed him. For the first time, David didn't feel like an outsider in his own home. One evening, as he sat on the couch watching Emily and Rex curled up together, he reached out, running his fingers through the dog's thick fur. "Thank you for taking care of her when I couldn't," he murmured, scratching gently behind Rex's ears. For a moment, Rex was still. Then, for the first time ever, the dog wagged his tail at him. And David knew he was finally where he was meant to be.